The story that we're doing for you today is a story from China, and it's a monster story. It's about a monster called the Nung. Now, you've probably heard stories about monsters, and I have to tell you that the second worst thing about the Nung is its diet. You see, the Nung like to eat people. Now, you're probably wondering what could be worse than a monster that eats people, but I have to tell you that what was worse about the Nung is the way that it ate its food. You see, the Nung chewed with its mouth open. Now, if you're being eaten by a monster, one of the things you want is for people to feel sorry for you, for your friends to look and say, "Oh no, my friend is being eaten by a monster." But if the Nung gets you and they see that, they go, "Ew, that's disgusting." And it's not until later that they realize they've lost a friend to the monster. Well, one day, a girl who had just grown enough to leave home was going to take some cakes home to her mother and father as a special treat for them. And as she walked along the road, she heard a terrible pair of sounds. And flip, flop, flip, flop. Now the growl could have been from almost anything. But you see, the Nung had huge feet. And so as it walked along, its feet made a flip, flop sound. And she knew that something that growled and made that sound must be the Nung. And sure enough, out of the bushes came a huge creature. Its body was the size of a gigantic bull. Its head was the size of a big cooking oven. It had horns and fangs and hooves. And it spoke. And it said, "You're carrying something that smells good. Give it to me." And it was the cakes that she had made for her parents. She couldn't give those to the monster. She said, but I made these specially for my parents. I can't give these to you. Should I make you something else? And the monster said, "Oh no, don't bother. But tonight, after you go home, I'm going to go to your house and devour you." "No," said the girl, "don't do that." But the Nung had turned its back and was walking away. Flip, flop, flip, flop. Now, the Nung was known to track people for miles and for hours and catch them and eat them. And she thought, "It's going to come to my home and eat me." And she did the only sensible thing she could think of to do. She sat down and began to cry. Because after all, a monster was going to come and eat her and chew with its mouth open. Well, if you are walking along a road and you see someone sitting by the side of the road crying, you'll probably ask them what's wrong. And most of the people who did heard that she was going to be eaten by a Nung and she said that it was coming to her house and going to devour her, and then they would say, "Ew, that's disgusting," and walk away. But after a little while, one lady who was a peddler, she would sell small things in the marketplace, and she said, "Oh, that's terrible. I don't know if I can stop the monster from eating you, but I have an idea. Take this packet of needles." And she gave the girl a packet of needles, about 24 of them. "Stick these in your door with the sharp points out near where the latch is. So when the monster comes to open your door, it's going to get needles stuck into its paws." Well, okay. And the young woman sat back down and took the needles, and the peddler went off. But she began to cry again because she knew a monster couldn't be beaten by just some needles getting into its paws. Well, after a little while, another peddler came by. And this peddler was selling fresh, smelly fertilizer for people to grow things in their gardens. And he heard the story of what was wrong and how the monster was going to come and eat her. And he said, I have an idea. If you put those needles in your door, the monster is going to try and find out what's wrong with its paws because they'll hurt. So you smear this fertilizer on the door too, and that way, when the monster smells its paws, it'll smell the smelly fertilizer and go, ew, that's disgusting, and maybe go away. Well, she didn't think that would help either, but she thanked the merchant and sat back down and cried some more. Well, another merchant came by. Snakes! Snakes for sale! Snakes! Now, you have to understand, in China, people would buy snakes, and you had to buy them fresh before you used them, especially if you were going to cook one of them or use it for medicine. And so, he was selling them still alive. And he heard the story of the Nung Gwama and said, I have an idea. If the monster gets the needle sticking into its paws and then smells the fertilizer, it's going to want to wash its paws before it eats you. So, in your cooking pot inside the house, put these snakes and don't turn on the heat. When the monster sticks its hands into the pot to wash them, the snakes will bite his fingers. Well, that sounded promising, but she didn't think it would scare away a monster as big as the Nung Gwama. So she sat down to cry again after the snake seller had gone. The next person coming down the road was selling fish. Fighting fish! Fighting fish! Well, he was selling fish that you would put into an aquarium not to swim peacefully, but to fight for your amusement. And so he gave her a pair of fish and said, put these into a cooking pot, but don't turn on the heat. After the Nung Gwama gets needles into its paws and the smelly fertilizer and gets bitten by snakes, it's going to want to make its paws feel better, and it will stick them into the cooking pot, and these fish will attack. She still didn't think that would defeat a monster, but she figured she was accepting things because these people were being so generous and she didn't have anything better to do. But she sat back down and cried again. Eggs! Eggs for sale! Eggs for sale! The next merchant came along selling eggs. And he heard the story and said, I know. After the Nung Gwama gets the needles into its paws and gets the smelly fertilizer on them and tries to wash them and gets bitten by snakes and tries to clean them off again and gets bitten by fish, it's going to stick its paws into your fireplace, into the ashes there to make its paws feel better. So, light a fire in your fireplace and stick these eggs into the ashes. They'll cook really hot, so when the Nung Gwama sticks its paws into the fireplace, the eggs will explode into its face with eggs and ashes. Well, she didn't know what that would do, but at least it was something. So she took the eggs and sat back down. Well, one more salesman came by, and he was selling big grinding stones for turning grain and rice into flour. Grinding stones, big, big grinding stones. And they were big. They were this big around. They were so big that you would put them on a metal axle and roll them across the grain. Well, he heard the story and said, I don't think that what these other people have told you will work. I think what you need is a grinding stone. What you need to do is tie a rope to the grinding stone, put the rope up into the rafters of your house, pull it up, and have it above your bed. And you hide under the bed. Now maybe if the Nungwama can't see where it's going from those eggs and ashes, and it'll be really mad from the other stuff, it's going to come and try to get you. And when it stands under the grinding stone, you drop the grinding stone on the monster. Won't that be a great idea? Well, she didn't think that would work either, but she accepted the grinding stone and the metal axle from the man, and she decided maybe she'd better go home. She had to hire someone to help her carry everything home, and she paid them with the cakes that she had planned to take to her parents. But she went home, and she put the needles and the fertilizer on the door. She put the snakes in the wash basin. She put the fish in the cooking pot. She put the eggs in the fireplace, and she got a rope and hauled the big grinding stone up into the rafters of her house and tied the rope other end to her bed. And she kept the axle just in case she needed it. Well, the night watchman came by. All is well, all is well. And the monster hadn't shown up. Ooh, maybe the monster was going to eat someone else, although that would be bad, but at least it wouldn't be her. The night watchman came by again. All is well, all is well. Maybe the monster didn't really know where she lived. Maybe the monster... Flip, flop, flip, flop. The monster was coming right up on her front porch. Flip, flop. I've come to eat you now. Well, aren't you going to open the door? Well, no, she wasn't going to open the door. She went and hid under her bed where she could reach the rope just in case everything worked. Well, if you're going to be rude and not open the door for me to devour you, I'll have to open the door myself. And the Nungwama reached out for the latch. Ow! What's this? Ow, ow, my fingers hurt. Ew, and they smell terrible. Ooh, you did this to me. I'm going to come into your house and really get you. And the Nungwama opened the door. But first I'm going to wash my paws. And it went over to the wash basin and stuck its paws into the water. Ow, 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 ow. Something's biting me. I've got to make them feel better. Went over to the cooking pot. Ow, 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 ow. Ooh, you're going to really get it. And he went over to the fireplace there, stuck his hands into the ashes. Bloosh! The eggs and the ashes blew up in his face. Ooh, now my paws hurt and I can't see. I'm going to really be mad at you. And he started walking all around her little house, looking to see if he could find his food. And finally, he was standing under the grindstone by the bed. I know you're here somewhere. I'm going to get you. And she untied the rope and bam! Down the grindstone fell on the monster and pinned him to the floor. Well, he looked kind of dead. And she got out from under the bed and bonked him on the head a couple of times with the axle just to see what would happen. And he didn't move. So she went out and found the night watchman and told him to get the guards. And the guards came and found the Nungwama dead on her floor, squashed by the grindstone. Now, it turns out there was a reward for the Nungwama because he had eaten so many people that the emperor was very upset. And so she got a reward for killing the Nungwama. And the next day, she made a new set of sweet cakes to take to her parents, and she had a nice treat for them, as well as a story to tell. The story about all those people and how they helped her kill the terrible Nungwama.